welcome to the Upside Down World. My name is Rebecca Trotter. I am a mom, a writer, a thinker, a teacher, a talker, a Christian, and an odd duck. In that order, but backwards. And today I want to talk to you about salvation. Have you been saved? Yeah. Well, there's a guy. He's a pastor, a Christian pastor, who most people have never heard of, but in the Christian ghetto, he's a really big thing. And he recently caused a big brouhaha by tweeting. He said, if you are not a Christian, you're going to spend eternity in hell. It is not unloving to say this. It would be unloving not to say this. And, you know, it's the internet, so some people were like, yeah, preach it, brother. And some people were like, oh, you're horrible. What a terrible person. How can you say that? But all of us have heard that before, because for a lot of people, that is our understanding of what salvation is. Salvation is the central, that's what Christianity is about. That's what Jesus came for, to save us. And what is he saving us from? Well, he's saving us from hell, of course. Duh. And so that is understood by many people to actually be the Christian gospel. Now, the problem with this is that I've actually read the Bible like a few times, and many, many years ago when I was, much younger, I was reading through, and it really struck me that this teaching that salvation means being saved from an eternity in hell is pretty much completely absent from the Bible. And there will be people who say, oh, no, that's not true. And then they'll quote, an example would be, there's a spot where Jesus says, anyone who doesn't believe in me is already condemned. Well, then they'll say, oh, see, they're condemned. Clearly, that means they're condemned to hell forever. Except it doesn't say that. It just says condemned. Condemned to what? They could be condemned to being stupid. They could be condemned to sin. They could be condemned to living in darkness. They could be condemned to ignorance. They could be condemned to any number of things. And to understand just how not convincing this idea is that, there are these verses that we can understand to mean that we're condemned to hell. For years, I attended evangelical churches, and every single service I ever attended, at some point we were told in no uncertain terms, if you do not accept Jesus Christ as your personal Lord and Savior, you are going to spend eternity being tortured in hell, or separated eternally from hell, or from God, whatever your understanding of hell is. But it was very clear, if you don't accept Jesus, you're going to hell. Jesus came to save you from hell. We were told this. It was very clear, which makes sense. If that is true, if the destiny of all people is being tortured in hell forever, or being separated from God forever, or even just being annihilated and no longer existing at some point after you die, that's like big news. That's something you need to tell people. You need to say, warning, warning, you're in danger, danger, danger. You need to make a choice. You have a limited time offer to avoid this terrible fate. And so that's what happens in evangelical churches and in a lot of churches. You are told you are in danger. If you don't make this choice, you're going to go to hell. Well, if this were true, that would be in the Bible, like not implied, not assuming that it was understood. It would be really, really explicit, but Jesus never says it. In the book of Acts, there are records of what the apostles went out and taught people, and they never said it. Paul never says it. It's just, yes, you can read it there if you believe that that's true, but it's not explicitly stated, which makes no sense. If it were true, the Bible would be doing the same thing that churches are doing today, and that Mark Driscoll did just recently, in saying, you're going to hell, you are in danger, I love you too much to allow you to go to hell without telling you you need to be saved. So, if salvation doesn't mean being saved from hell, what does it mean? Well, over the course of many years of study and prayer and meditation and all of that good Christian-y stuff, I've come to understand salvation as theosis. Theosis, of course, is a Greek theological term that most people are unfamiliar with, but it was the teaching of the early church. It was the belief of the early church fathers. It is still today the explicit teaching of the Eastern Orthodox Church. And theosis is their understanding of what salvation is, what happens when you are saved, what Jesus came to actually do for us. So before I get into exactly what theosis is, let's go back to the beginning to understand what it is we're being saved from. Why do we need salvation? In the beginning, God made man and woman. He made mankind in his own image. Now, I want you to think for a minute, consider that we're like a mirror. And we are meant to reflect. We're like an image of God. So when God looks at us, it's like he's looking at a little baby version of himself. That's like who we are. That's who he made us to be. We're the God that made the universe, that made cells and galaxies and nebula and the eyeball and all the wonders of the universe. We're supposed to be walking around reflecting that, looking like that God, But of course, we have this issue of sin. Now, sin is often spoken of as like, oh, you terrible, horrible, immoral, evil person, you have sinned, bad, 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 bad. But if you go back to the Greek and the Hebrew, sin is actually derived from an archery term, and it simply means to miss. So if we go back to our idea that we're supposed to be like a mirror that reflects God back, it's like if you took that mirror and you just moved it. So instead of reflecting God, it's, reflecting a squirrel in a tree or something. It's reflecting all sorts of things. It could be good things, it could be bad things, but it's not God. And so sin is what happens, and it can be things that we do, and it can also be things that other people do to us. I mean, many of us are dealing with trauma. All of us have been betrayed and mistreated, and it affects us. It changes us. It moves us so that we can't just be who we are, be who we were created to be, And we behave in ways that don't reflect God, that don't reflect who we were made to be. What theosis says you need to be redeemed from the effects of sin, your own and sins against you. You need to be redeemed to that image. You need to be like that mirror that's taken and turned back so it's actually facing God, so that it's reflecting God, right? And when that happens, then God is looking at you. You are looking at God. You are living in union with him. You're living as the person you were created to be. We're all on this whole self-discovery thing, right? And people say, oh, just be yourself. Well, who am I? Well, Christianity has an answer for that. You are made in the image of God. What Christianity is telling us that is still very relevant today is that all of the stuff that keeps us from being who we were created to be, well, there's a solution for that. We can be turned back. We can rediscover who we are. So how does this work? Well, quite often in Scripture, sin is spoken of as being like dirt, filth, grime, dirt. And so sin, think about, we're made in the image of God. That's the reality of who we are. So we're like a diamond. And you could take that diamond and you can drop it in a tide pool, and it can get covered over in sand and bits of shell and rotting plant matter, and it can be eaten and cracked back out and left to dry. And at some point, that diamond, you can't see it. It's covered up. It's, you don't know that it's there. But it's still there. It's still unchanged. That's still the reality of what it is. And what Jesus says, he came to set the prisoner free. He came to redeem us from that prison of that sin, of all that crap that people have put on us and that we've created for ourselves and that we just picked up along the way, and for it to be removed. Now, the thing is that that's not just a matter of saying, okay, well, I'm going to find myself and I'm going to be a good person. Only God actually knows who God is, what God looks like. And therefore, only God knows who he made you to be, who you truly are. And we need him to actually go through this process of redemption, of being cleansed of all of the crud that covers the reality of who we are. We need God to be able to say, no, this way, not that way. And we need him to remove all of that stuff. And the problem is that we tend to look everywhere except for to God. We say, well, I'm tired of being miserable, so I'm going to look at somebody who's not miserable and see what they're doing, which will take you so far. But in the end, they're not you. What worked for them might not work for you, and it could be that they're completely off course, and what looks like from the outside a wonderful life that you wish you had is really just misery on the inside. So you need to, God is saying, no, look at me. I can show you the way back. I can show you who you're supposed to be, and then all that stuff that covers us. It's hard to let go of that. Who am I if I let go of all the bad things that have happened to me? Who am I if I let go of all the habits and all the ways of thinking that have, that I've depended on to get by for all these years? Who am I? And so we tend to want to cling to them like they're friends, this dirt and grime that's just covering up who we really are, And it takes a lot of work. It takes trusting God. It takes leaning on Him. It takes prayer. It takes, and it's not that we're doing the work. It's more a matter of allowing God to do that work. It's hard to let go of things. It's hard. We say, oh, it's sin, it's bad, it's ugh. But the reality is, it's comfortable. It's what we know. It's our home, and it's hard to let go of that. And so, that's what St. Paul, the apostle who wrote a lot of the New Testament, says, that we need to work out our salvation with fear and trembling. It's a process to go through. Theosis is a process. And it's a process. It's not an easy one. It's why Jesus said that we need to be willing to pick up our cross and carry it. Why we needed to be willing to sell everything we have. We needed to be willing to walk through the suffering of hell, really, in order to come out the other side. I mean, that's what he did. He went to the cross. He, tradition says he descended into hell, and then he arose. And that's our pattern, That's what Christianity is about. That's what it's teaching us, that if we're following God, if we are seeking to be loving, if we're seeking to be redeemed to who we truly are, that Jesus came to show us the way. He said, follow me, it's a narrow path. And, and I think that's why the whole teaching that hell is the point of salvation, that salvation is just a get out of hell free card, is so popular. I mean, how hard is that? You believe the right things and you'll be just fine. You'll be saved. Well, that doesn't really require a whole lot from us. It certainly doesn't require carrying a cross. It doesn't require suffering. It doesn't require selling everything we own. It doesn't require all the things that Jesus taught in order to happen. But real salvation, really becoming who we are, that takes God. That takes following Jesus. And now, remember I said I'm a mom, yeah, that's my screaming kid who I should probably go attend to. But I hope that this has been helpful for you, that it's made you think a little bit more about, what salvation actually is, why it's worth your while, why it's worth worrying about. You don't have to believe in hell to benefit from the salvation that Jesus offers. You just have to be somebody who wants to be who you truly are, who you were made to be. And if you would like to learn more about my upside down understanding of Christianity, I would invite you to come visit me. My website is www.theupsidedownworld.com, and you can learn more about me and my teachings and find information about my books and hook up with me on Facebook and all that fun social media stuff. If you did find this helpful, I would also invite you to use the share buttons and pass it on to the people around you. Start an argument. Why not? Many blessings. Peace out. We'll see you next time.